It's official. Australian house prices are expensive. In fact, they are crazy expensive. They're actually some of the most expensive house prices in the entire world. How did this happen in a country where the great Australian dream was just to own a family home with a backyard? Remember playing cricket in the backyard? We used to do it on the driveway. Guess what? This dream has now become a nightmare for many Australians who can't afford their own home due to absolutely ridiculously expensive house prices. I'm Biko Konstantinos, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Whether you own your own home or don't, stick around because house prices affect everyone. And at the end, I'll be giving my prediction for the future of Australian house prices. And make sure you give this video a like if you enjoy it and consider subscribing to my channel. I'll be analysing and commenting on the housing market, stock market, economy, and all that big stuff that can affect your life. Now, why are Australian house prices so bloody expensive? Just this week, the 2023 edition of the Demographia International Housing Affordability Report was published. We're going to go through this form to give us a great comparison of housing affordability across many advanced countries. This report rates 94 major housing markets across 8 nations, being Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, Singapore, United Kingdom, and the United States. And the information's current up to September 2022. To compare across all these different markets, the report uses a median multiple to come up with a middle income housing affordability rating for each included housing market. The median multiple is a price to income ratio, which is calculated by taking the median house price of an area and dividing that by the gross median household income before tax for that area. And by doing this, we're able to do a great comparison across many different cities/towns. So if the median multiple is 3 or below, that housing market would be classed as affordable, whereas anything over 5 is classed as severely unaffordable. Before we start checking out how expensive house prices are, let's consider the effects of surging house prices. Housing unaffordability intensifies inequality, and many feel that deteriorating housing affordability is an existential threat to the middle class. You see, back before the year 2000, middle income earners were doing pretty good because wages grew roughly the same amount as house prices grew. Generation after generation basically had the same opportunities to purchase property and to pay off loans which weren't that large compared to their income. But looking at this graph from the OECD, we can see in the late 1990s, house prices started to massively outperform income, and the gap just seems to keep widening. So what this does is build a very large wealth gap between property owners and non-property owners. But what this also means is that successive generations, if they can afford a home, are paying a lot more compared to their level of income. So while homeowners back here could relatively easily pay off their home, successive generations are finding it a lot harder to first be able to buy and second be able to pay off their home. So this means that more recent home buyers are having to spend a much higher proportion of their wages to their mortgage. And if you're a non-homeowner, it's been even worse because house prices keep getting more expensive, rents are also getting very expensive, but income is staying relatively low. And for this reason, 40% of middle income earners are classed as being financially vulnerable, meaning they're just one shock away from a financial crisis. So the effect of crazy expensive house prices is that we have a portion of property owners getting much more wealthy, especially those who bought many years ago. But then we have another large portion of the community who previously would be middle income earners getting squeezed financially so that they're mostly living paycheck to paycheck, which is a massive worry. In a well-functioning market, the median priced houses should be affordable to median income households, as they were in pretty much every single housing market before the inception of more restrictive land use policies. Around 1990, price to income ratios were completely affordable in Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the United States. But we can easily see here how things have completely deteriorated. In 2019, Australia's ratio rose to 6.9%, and in 2022 rose to a whopping 8.2%. Now, New Zealand also shows terrible affordability, but this graph is a bit skewed because for New Zealand, they only assessed Auckland. So pre-COVID, housing affordability in Australia and New Zealand was shocking. So what did we do? Just reduce interest rates to zero and kept them there for a very lengthy period of time so that wild, crazy speculation entered the housing market. Pretty much like we've never seen before. And afterwards, what did the RBA chairman Phil Lowe have to say?
Certainly sorry.
Now, Australia is a country obsessed with using property to generate wealth. And why wouldn't it be? For 30 years, house prices have massively outperformed wages. And on top of that, you get extremely generous tax deductions for owning property. So Phil Lowe reduces rates to near zero and then tells everyone he doesn't think rates will rise until 2024. What kind of irresponsible rubbish statement is that, Phil?
Sorry.
People's lives are being affected because housing affordability has further deteriorated in Australia. The demography report shows us just how bad housing affordability has deteriorated since COVID. In 2022, not a single major market was rated as affordable. And this is the first time that's happened in the 19 years since the demography report has been published. In 2019, there were 11% of housing markets classed as affordable, but going back to 2011, 25% were affordable. And that's just over 10 years ago. But there's also been a substantial increase in severely unaffordable markets, with now 55% being deemed severely unaffordable. Here's our housing affordability report. Starting here at number 1 with the most affordable market, Pittsburgh, USA, with a 3.1 median multiple. And as you can see going down the list, the majority of the most affordable housing markets are all in the USA, with a couple of Canadian markets in the mix. But once we hit over 5 of a median multiple, from Dublin onwards, it all goes downhill. Sitting at 50th least affordable, we've got Perth, Western Australia, with a 5.4 median multiple. So Perth in this report is classed as severely unaffordable, but compared to cities in Australia, is one of the best we have. So we keep going down the housing markets, which are getting more and more unaffordable, until we come to Brisbane, 78th worst affordable city, then Adelaide at 81, then Melbourne with a 9.9 median multiple. At number 88, we can see Auckland in the mix with a 10.8 median multiple. Then we've got Los Angeles, San Jose, Honolulu, Vancouver, and what would you know? Sydney, Australia, 93rd least affordable city, or second worst across all these nations and all these markets, with a median multiple of 13.3, with only the super populated, ultra dense Hong Kong having worse affordability. So if we remove Hong Kong from the equation, Australia has the worst housing affordability in the world. How about that for a prize? Are our politicians even concerned about this? I know I am. And it's not just Sydney. I mean, we've got Adelaide and Brisbane being more expensive than London and New York. On what planet is that even possible? Sadly, it's this planet, the great Australian dream. But he's cordial. So what does all this mean? Well, if you're a first home buyer, it basically means you're screwed unless you have help from your parents. A young couple on an average income, meaning they're both working full time, would need to spend 8 years saving for a 20% deposit on a Sydney house worth $900,000. Now, the median house price in Sydney is around 1.3 million. So for $900,000, you're basically going to get a shack. And to afford this shack, you'll have to save for about 8 years. And currently we've got a rental crisis with rents going through the roof, which will make it even harder to save for that deposit. Welcome to the Australian dream, where you'll need to have a wage of around $250,000 just to buy an average home. So my thoughts on the Australian housing market. Australian house prices have fallen around 8 to 10% from the post-COVID peak, and I feel that they're going to fall further. Many believe that house prices have already already bottomed, but I don't think that's the case. House prices have held up quite strongly due to much lower numbers of houses for sale compared to the average. So because of that, over the coming months, I believe houses for sale will start increasing back closer to their normal average. And that, combined with much higher interest rates and all those people coming off the ultra low fixed interest rates, should see further pressure on Australian house prices. And on top of that, we have early signs that consumer spending is starting to decline. Layoffs are increasing around the world, signaling that unemployment will soon start to rise. And that will lead many countries into recession, which leads me to believe that Australian house prices won't be outperforming anytime soon. But as we've seen over the past crazy few years, anything can happen. I'm Biko Konstantinos.